My name is Sandy, and I work as a maid, and when I was a little girl, growing up in a small town in Nebraska, I couldn't have imagined that my life would turn out this way. In my family, generations had worked on farms or in local shops, and breaking free from this sleepy provincial life seemed impossible, but I always had a thirst for adventure and a desire to see the world beyond, so as soon as I turned 18, I gathered all my meager belongings and set out on my own, without a penny to my name. The first few years were incredibly tough, and I scraped by with odd jobs, cleaning rooms in cheap motels, waitressing in diners, working in laundromats, and at times, it felt like I was stuck and would spend my whole life moving from one backwater to another. I grew up in a poor, large family, and my parents worked tirelessly on the local farm from dawn till dusk, trying to make ends meet, but their meager earnings barely covered the needs of me and my 4 siblings. From a very young age, I was forced to help my parents, shouldering an overwhelming burden of work. In the summers, I toiled alongside adults in the fields, harvesting crops, and in winter, I worked in the local bakery, shivering from the cold on my way to work, and on weekends, I took care of household chores, washing, cleaning, looking after my younger siblings. At times, I felt like I was on the brink of physical and mental exhaustion. My parents tried their best, but the perpetual lack of money prevented them from easing my burden. The joys of childhood, toys, and fun were something out of reach for me. The biggest challenge came when my father fell seriously ill and spent several months in the hospital. My mother was left alone with 5 children, without a penny of income. As the eldest, I had to leave school and devote myself entirely to taking care of the family. Working as a cleaner in a local office, I gave every cent I earned to my mother. We barely managed to make ends meet and not end up literally on the street. I remember crying in despair at night, seeing no way out of this hopeless situation. It seemed like we were doomed to work ourselves to the bone, never escaping poverty. But even in the darkest moments, a spark of dreams burned inside me to break free someday from the clutches of poverty and see the world beyond. When my father recovered and was able to return to work, a glimmer of hope finally appeared in my life. I was determined that as soon as I turned 18, I would leave my hometown to start afresh, and so, with determination, I gathered all my meager belongings in a bundle and set off, penniless but with a burning thirst for adventure and a desire to see the world. Here's the maximally stretched addendum about how, due to extreme lack of money, Sandy had to take a job as a maid. After resolutely leaving my hometown, my life became a continuous struggle for survival. Without education, connections, or any savings, I was forced to take on any odd job just to make ends meet. Initially, I scraped by with odd jobs, cleaning rooms in cheap motels, washing dishes in diners, working as a cleaner in offices and stores. Often, after a whole day of grueling work, I would only receive a few measly dollars. Due to constant financial struggles, I had to count every cent. At times, I found myself sleeping on the streets or in homeless shelters. Dreams of a better life and travel faded with each passing day against the harsh reality. But I stubbornly continued to move forward, unwilling to give up and return to my hometown with nothing. In one of the next towns where I settled, there was a luxurious resort hotel for the wealthy. Seeing the job opening announcement, I decided to try my luck. The interview was fateful for me. The hotel manager, an elderly gentleman with a penetrating gaze, immediately saw in me the determination and perseverance that were highly valued in the job. He hired me as a maid despite my complete lack of experience in such a position. For me, it was salvation and a long-awaited chance to change my life. I literally worked my fingers to the bone, learning all the intricacies of servicing luxurious apartments. Often, after a shift, I was left without strength, barely able to move my legs from exhaustion, but I stubbornly gritted my teeth and worked harder. The hotel management appreciated my enthusiasm and diligence. Within a few months, they transferred me to the permanent staff, offering a more humane schedule and a decent salary by those standards. For me, it was such a relief. After many years of continuous wandering, I immersed myself in work, gradually learning all the ins and outs of being a maid in a luxury hotel, how to properly make beds with silk linens, how to handle antique furniture, how to clean bathrooms with hydro massage. In my free time, I studied books on etiquette, service standards, and languages. Perhaps for someone, such a lifestyle seemed like joyless routine, but, for me, it was the first step on a new, long-awaited, and right path. Working at the resort hotel became a springboard for me to new heights. I completely changed my life, achieving incredible success for a girl from the depths of the countryside. But, as it turned out, it was only the beginning of the journey. One day, in the midst of another hot summer, the hotel manager called me for an unscheduled meeting. Thoughts of possible problems or omissions on my part swirled in my head as I walked to his office. However, what he told me came as a complete surprise. It turned out that quite recently, a new luxury resort complex had opened in Miami, one of the most prestigious and expensive in the country. Its owners and management were constantly in search of the best staff to serve their very affluent and demanding guests, and my name unexpectedly appeared on the list of recommendations. The manager confessed that he himself had sent my data and characteristics to the management of the new complex several months ago. He highly valued my hard work, professionalism, and ability to find an approach even to the most capricious guests. According to him, I was perfect for working in such a prestigious place, so, this unscheduled conversation was organized. The manager informed me that an official job offer had come from Miami for me. They invited me to lead the team of maids at their new complex in the position of head maid. The salary and benefits package were simply fabulous by my previous standards. A deathly silence reigned as I tried to comprehend what I had heard. Just yesterday, I was an ordinary girl from the countryside, toiling away at a penny job, and today, I received an offer from the capital of luxury and glamour. Of course, I accepted this twist of fate without a second thought. The next day, I began packing my bags and arranging all the necessary documents. Saying goodbye to colleagues from the old hotel was very touching. We had become almost like one family over the years. But I was determined not to stop at what I had achieved. Unseen horizons of luxury, splendor, and travel opened up before me. In Miami, I was awaited by my dream job and a new, much more prosperous life. I was no longer the exhausted girl from poverty, long forgetting the deprivations of childhood. Moving to Miami was a genuine culture shock for me. Not long ago, I was cleaning modest hotel rooms, and now I had to bring shine to apartments that cost a fortune. I had never seen such splendor before: luxurious interiors, antique furniture, bathrooms with marble and gold. For the first few weeks in my new position, I felt lost and insecure, but over time, excitement and professional pride took over. I immersed myself in learning all the nuances of working with such demanding guests and expensive decorations. I memorized the rules of table setting, ordering dishes, and serving yachts and limousines. Soon, I became a truly indispensable professional in my field. Today, serving billionaires and celebrities in one of the most prestigious places, I feel incredible pride. From a girl from the forgotten depths, I have come a long way to the heights of luxury and glamour, and this is just the beginning. I am determined to achieve even greater heights. Working at the luxurious Miami resort complex, I regularly encountered members of high society. I serviced the rooms of billionaires, movie stars, politicians, and other celebrities, but one meeting stood out from the usual circle of guests and remained memorable for me for life. That day, I was tidying up the presidential suites of the hotel. It was a whole luxurious suite consisting of several bedrooms, living rooms, offices, and even its own conservatory. Usually, such suites were rented only by very wealthy and influential individuals. I did most of the cleaning in complete silence, as the guest was absent at that moment, but closer to the evening, when I had just finished tidying up the office, the inhabitant of the room returned. He was a man in his 60s, with aristocratic manners and impeccable style in clothing. His face seemed vaguely familiar to me, but I couldn't remember his name. However, his majestic posture and confident movements revealed a person of immense authority and influence. Noticing me, he kindly inquired if everything was all right and if I felt comfortable at work. His friendly tone and paternal intonation somewhat dispelled my embarrassment. We started talking, and gradually it turned out that this person was one of the largest businessmen and investors not only in the USA but also in the world. He owned an entire empire of companies in various industries. From oil production and heavy industry to high technology and entertainment, his assets were scattered across many countries, and his fortune was measured in tens of billions of dollars. At the same time, he remained quite closed and unnoticed by the public. He rarely appeared in public, did not give interviews, and generally tried to avoid publicity about the details of his personal life and business. That's why I couldn't immediately recognize his name. Of course, I immediately gave my full consent, fearing that the wealthy man would change his mind and withdraw his offer. All that remained was to urgently arrange all the necessary documents and prepare for a real journey. Just a couple of days later, my employer and I were already flying out of Miami on his private jet. During the flight, I kept sticking to the window, marveling at the picturesque views unfolding below, and when we finally landed in Italy, I was literally overwhelmed with delight. The millionaire's mansion was located in one of the most exclusive corners of the Ligurian Riviera, right on the shore of the Azure Sea, a huge villa in the ancient Italian Renaissance style, surrounded by a wonderful garden with centuries-old pine and palm trees, luxurious flower beds, and fountains. At the entrance, we were greeted by a line of servants in strict livery, who escorted us to the main hall. It was a real palace with high vaulted ceilings, antique Baroque-style furniture, statues, and tapestries on the walls. Everything here literally breathed history, antiquity, and boundless wealth. My host laughed, noticing the amazement on my face, and immediately invited me to dinner on the terrace, which offered a stunning view of the Mediterranean coast. It was already dark, and the lit torches cast mysterious splashes of orange light on the stone arches. On that magical evening, over a rich dinner, I listened to stories from the life of my great employer. Fascinated by his phenomenal successes and limitless opportunities, he eagerly shared his plans and vision of the future, fueling in me the emerging ambition and desire for self-realization. And so began my new working days as the personal maid of the richest and most influential person in the world. Every day, while serving this incredible mansion, I gained new impressions and incentives for my own development. This job truly became fateful for me. As I began to live on the Ligurian coast in Italy and interact with the local residents, I heard various stories and rumors about my employer, the millionaire. Neighbors whispered that he always had employees, but then for some unknown reason they disappeared and changed their qualifications. These stories turned out to be frightening and mysterious. I began to ask questions to the neighbors, but most of them preferred to remain silent or brush off, as if afraid to draw attention to these strange disappearances. However, some of the neighbors boldly shared their suspicions. They claimed that the millionaire possessed some strange power capable of changing people and their destinies. They told stories of mysterious events happening around him, about which few knew the real truth. These tales only fueled my doubts and made me think about my own safety. I felt that something was hidden behind the glossy facade of my employer's luxurious life, and I decided to find out what exactly. All right, let's extend the following edition by several thousand characters. Despite the initial fears and rumors, my work in the millionaire's mansion continued to delight me. Time flew by unnoticed, and I gradually immersed myself in the rhythm of this new life. My duties included not only cleaning the rooms but also serving guests in the restaurant and assisting in organizing various events. Every day brought something new and interesting, and I gladly embraced the challenges, striving to perform all my tasks to the best of my ability. The surroundings of the mansion were filled with luxury and refinement. The interiors embodied the sophistication and wealth of the owner, while the view from the windows of the endless blue sea made me marvel at the natural beauty of the Ligurian coast. It seemed to me that I found myself in a fairy tale world, where every moment reminded me of something incredible and unique. I also began to get to know my employer better. He turned out to be a person with rich life experience and unusual views on the world. We spent a lot of time in conversations, and I learned a lot of new and interesting things from him. He was not only a successful businessman but also an art connoisseur, philosopher, and traveler. His stories about his adventures in different parts of the world made me dream of going on a journey myself and seeing it all with my own eyes. However, despite all the luxury and comfort in the mansion, I sometimes felt a strange unease. The shadow of doubts and fears that I felt in the first days after arrival sometimes returned to me, reminding me that behind this brilliant facade there might be something dark and mysterious. I tried not to think about it and focus on my work, but sometimes I felt like someone was watching me from the shadows, and it made me shiver. Nevertheless, I continued to devote all my energy to work and tried not to think about my doubts. My work brought me satisfaction, and I felt that I was doing something important and useful. from time to time. However, I still returned to thoughts about my employer's mysterious past and what might be hidden behind his noble appearance. Soon my worst fears began to materialize, and rumors about my employer started coming to life. I came face to face with it one of those dark evenings when the mansion was shrouded in thick fog, and the sea outside the window murmured mysteriously. That evening, I stayed at work late to finish some tasks. The mansion seemed particularly deserted and ominous as I walked through the corridors, illuminated only by the soft light of dim lamps. I felt like I was being watched, but I tried to brush off those thoughts, focusing on my work. However, when I found myself in one of the rooms, I heard a rustle behind me. Turning around, I saw my employer standing in the doorway with an expression that made my heart stop. Something dark and incomprehensible flickered in his eyes, and I realized that now I was alone with him in a closed room. He approached me, his shadowy figure casting menacing shades on the walls. I tried to step back, but he was quick and stronger than me. He began to advance towards me, at first gently, but then almost pounced on me without my consent. My screams echoed in the emptiness, and my resistance seemed futile against his strength and power. At that moment, I realized that all those terrible stories I had heard about him were true. I was trapped, without protection and help. That evening changed everything I thought about my job and my future. Only one thought arose in my heart: to run as far away from this place and this man as possible while there was still a chance. My screams hung in the air. My attempts to break free from his grip were futile. He didn't let go of me, his eyes gleaming with rage and desire. In that moment, I realized that he truly saw something more in me than just a maid. He didn't just need a housekeeper, he needed a wife, someone to submit to his will unconditionally, someone who would always be there, someone to belong to. Horror engulfed me. I wasn't ready for such a turn of events. Thoughts raced through my mind. I felt like a bird in a cage, deprived of the ability to fly freely. How could I have ended up in such a situation? All my dreams of a better life crumbling before my eyes. Ensnared in the web of his manipulation and cruelty, he kept closing in on me, his hands gripping me tighter, and I felt his breath on my face, fear consuming me, feeling like I couldn't fight anymore. But at that moment something inside me rose up. I desperately tried to break free, even if it would be the last thing I did. My struggle was in vain. He was too strong, too powerful to let me slip through his fingers. He kept advancing, his eyes flashing with madness and thirst for power. I was on the brink of breaking, my soul crying out for help, but no one came to my aid. Ever since he had frightened me and made me feel like I was in a cage, my days in the mansion had become a nightmare. He didn't let me leave the house, locking me in, as if I were his prisoner. My attempts to escape were futile. The doors were locked, the windows shut, and the guards, who once seemed friendly, now stood guard as if I were a threat to their master. Despair gripped me. I could only dream of escaping this nightmare and returning to my former life, my thoughts filled with fear and anxiety. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't call my family or friends for help. I was completely isolated from the outside world, which made me panic even more. He continued to harass me, every day, every hour, giving me no rest. His presence was hellish for me, and his touch, torture. I felt trapped, devoid of freedom and hope for salvation. My only hope was that I could find a way to escape. I secretly searched for a way out of the house, trying to find weak points in his defense, but every time I attempted to pass through locked doors or windows, I encountered obstacles and dangers that only exacerbated my desperate situation. My thoughts were filled with only one idea: to run as far away as possible from this place and this man. But as long as I remained here, in this dark mansion, my hope for salvation seemed very distant and unattainable. My days in captivity continued, and I still fought for my freedom and hope for salvation. But when it seemed like there was no way out of this hopeless situation, help came from an unexpected place, from the neighbors. They saw my helplessness and suffering, and decided to help me. They noticed strange changes in my behavior, and felt that something was wrong. They began gathering information about my employer, and their investigation led them to terrifying discoveries about his past and his true intentions. One day, when he was away from home, they decided to act. The neighbors helped me bypass the security and escape from the mansion, providing me with cover and support. We planned every step like in a good thriller, distracting the guards, disguising my escape, and precise instructions on where to run. Thanks to their help and my determination, I managed to escape. We ran through dark streets, past houses and shops. I felt my legs carrying me forward, filled with adrenaline and fear. But when I found myself safe, among people who supported me, I felt that I was finally free. My neighbors were my heroes. They risked their own safety to help me. Their kindness and compassion restored my faith in humanity and hope for a better future. Now I know that I will never be alone in the fight for my freedom and dignity. Immediately after my release, I headed to the airport. My only thought was to return to Nebraska, to my family, to my home. I rushed to the counters and bought tickets for a plane back to my hometown. A sense of relief and freedom enveloped me when I saw the electronic boarding passes in my hands. Leaving this nightmare world behind, I felt like I was returning to myself, to my true self. Time in the millionaire's mansion left scars on me, but it also made me stronger and more confident. Now I knew that I would never lose my independence and freedom, no matter what trials awaited me in the future. Upon arriving home in Nebraska, I felt like a returning traveler. With every passing meter, I felt my heart fill with joy and relief. In the end, I returned to my homeland, where my family and friends awaited me, where I could start a new chapter in my life, despite all the trials and difficulties I went through. I knew that I wanted to return to my normal life, to my job, to my duties as a maid. It was something I knew and understood, something I could do well, something that brought me satisfaction and confidence. So here I am again, in my hometown, returning to my old job. But now I saw it from a new perspective. I wasn't just a maid, I was a fighter who overcame many difficulties and emerged victorious. My work became a symbol of my strength and determination, and every room I cleaned was a step toward a new beginning and a better future. So I continue my journey, with pride and confidence in my abilities. I know that there may be many trials and challenges in my life, but I am ready for them. I have learned that even the darkest times can lead to bright light if only we keep our hope and faith in ourselves.